What's going on, guys, and welcome back to the Coach to Coach podcast. Today, we are going to be talking about training, but before we get into that, we'll do our catch up as we normally do. So, Joe, what's going on with you? How's everything going? How's training? How's life? Tell me,
Yeah,
talk to me.
yeah. This is the most. I think I've said it a couple episodes ago, but just still having tons of fun with training and how things are going. Weights up, body weight, lifts are going up as well. Like pretty much every session now. Something is stronger. Something is moving better. After this, I'm actually gonna head out and go hit upper body too. Hopefully record that full session. So I said like a few podcasts ago I was gonna get going on recording full sessions. The mics are fully charged and I'm actually gonna get that one started today. So
Nice.
yeah, I have no complaints. My body feels great. I feel like my look has developed within the last few weeks. Just the more I do, the more I stay on plan. So I have no complaints. I'm loving everything. How's your stuff going?
It's going good, but on your point, yeah, it's nice when you get into a good groove and everything is just falling into place, and you can kind of see things developing because it's not always that. Like you can be making progress and like you just don't really see much happening, but there are, if you're paying attention, there are always going to be clues. If you're tracking, the things that matter, you're going to be able to see a trend associated with those data points. So it's always good when you're in a good groove like that. And I'm myself also in a good groove. Training is going really, really well. I actually just changed around my training split. So I was doing basically, it was a kind of like a DC style split where one day was, God, what is it? It's like weird body parts. One day is like chest, tries, back, and forearms, and the other day is like, I guess that's almost everything. One day is like hamstrings, quads, forearms, and biceps. So it was kind of like a weird split, and I ran it for a couple weeks, and ultimately like just wanted to get back to something. I didn't have any real issue with it, but I think a part of the problem why I felt disconnected from it was that the body parts being trained were so dissimilar on some of the days, right? Where I wanted to almost be able to get into a groove where there's a certain feeling like when you're doing like a push session or you're just training a single body part, you like several movements on like just a single body part where that body part kind of like blows up and it gets volumized and there's a feeling associated with it. And so I was kind of missing out on some of that. And I was like, you know what? I want to get back to just something that was more in line with what I was doing. So pretty much all the same movements. It's just the structure of when and on what day they're done has changed. So it's just a pull, push legs and an arm day, basically. But
So
lifts are going up. Everything's feeling really good. Getting back to, I have been for a while, getting back to some of like just really basic movements, deadlifts, barbell squats. I got pen lay rows, pull ups. Like my hands are, they're starting to get like really, really calloused again. I was looking at them today. I was like, man, my hands haven't been this calloused for a while. And I think that says something because you use machines, like there's not like the knurling, it's not the same abrasion on your hands. And so the calluses get a little soft when you're using just machines, but you get those barbells and dumbbells back into the mix and those calluses start fucking firing right back up.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, everything's going well. I'm in a little bit of a pullback right now with the diet. I was my calories up to like 4,500 or something like that. And initially, when I had my food up, when I moved the food up, my weight was super, super stable. It wasn't really doing a whole lot, which was interesting. And then out of nowhere, it just was like boom, 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 and just really started climbing. And so I started to, at that point, see visuals start to go in a direction that I didn't want them to go or continue going in on. So I just pulled the food back a little bit, nothing crazy, just to slow it down, and everything's tightening back up, and I'll start working the food back up. But yeah, that's pretty much what I got going on.
Solid stuff.
Okay, so we're gonna talk about training. We're gonna talk about training day. You mentioned that you had been, I guess, getting some questions about training from some of your people.
Yeah. Well, so I one of the clients that I signed on, I'm just doing nutrition, but to kind of get the full scope of everything, I just wanted to see what her
Hey,
training
hold
was
on. Let
like.
me my OCD. Let me interrupt you. My OCD is killing me. Can you center yourself in the video. Like, see how you're off to the, yeah,
Is that better?
yeah.
Okay. I'm
OCD, man.
turned too. Yeah, no,
OCD.
that's fine. Yeah, for
Yeah.
framing and stuff.
Yeah.
But whenever I take on a new client or just regular conversation in the gym or in my DMs, pertaining to clientele, I always just like to know, like, get the full scope. What's your training like? What are you doing? Just gather as much info as I can. And a lot of the time, I get a lot of people being like, "Oh my training is solid. I'm doing this, that, and the third." Everyone says that they're doing everything that they can. And then I take a look at it, and it's sometimes it's nothing. Sometimes it's like,
Sometimes there's nothing to look at because they don't have a program or a log or anything to give you.
exactly. With because I talk to a lot of like younger guys. I'm 29, but there's 22, 23, 25 ish age range people in there. So what I'm finding is most of the time they're just like young, energetic, like they just want to go in and like kill shit. And I think that can be, you can make some pretty good gains, just kind of going in there and just wanting to move weight. But I think eventually that is going to stall. I think your physique is going to stall, your progress is going to stall, and you're going to hit a point where you have to have this data to tell you where you need to go. And a lot of people just they're not tracking anything. They don't have anything concrete that they're basing their training off of. They don't have weeks where it's like, okay, I need to hit this weight for this many reps, so on and so forth. It's kind of just going in, it's chest day. So I'm hitting some bench and I'm hitting some dumbbells, but there's no real progression in place that they
And
can like anticipate.
and you can get away with that early. Like that absolutely works early on. But once you get out of that kind of beginner phase, you're gonna need to be a little bit more targeted in your approach. And if you're talking about building a balanced physique, and even more so, because we've all seen it, like, the guy that in the gym that only bench presses and, does fucking dumbbell curls or curls or whatever. So he's got a big chest, big biceps, no fucking back, no legs. If you just go into the gym and do the things that you like to do, you will not build a balanced physique. So that's where you have to understand what you are trying to be. If you're trying to build a well-rounded, balanced physique, you are going to have to do things that you might not like doing because that's what's required to build the physique. If you go in and you just blast chest 3 times per week, you'll have a great chest and have shit everything else. So that has to come into the mix. You know what I mean? You really have to start thinking about, okay, well, what am I trying to do here? And that's how I look at it. Like whenever I put my training together, I've said this before, what you water will grow. Right. So if I want my arms to grow, I'm probably going to water them a little bit more. I'm probably going to put a little bit more volume into my arms. And I have that quantified. I know how many sets per week I'm doing on my arms relative to my other body parts. I have all this stuff lined up and I understand it and I can easily see where I'm at any point in time and how much volume I was doing at that point in time. So I can correlate the results that I'm getting. And I think there's a level of maturity that comes with that. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and maybe not even just maturity, but like a level of experience, right? You don't just land on that right away, but that's why people work with coaches, so you can fast track that stuff and have somebody just take care of that for you and you don't have to think about it. All you need to do is just go into the gym and you just nail the plan because they've already factored all of those things in. Anytime I build a training program for somebody, I'm looking at the volume across the week and I'm putting that, more volume into body parts that need work and less into ones that are already fucking strong.
Yeah. Yeah. And even for myself, right? Like before you and I started working together, like if you would have asked me what my training was like, I would tell you, yeah, I've got the it's all periodized and progressive overload. I've got the whole nine, but then you look at my programming and it's just you don't have any, like you just don't have anything. And of that,
Or
like,
you're not consistent with it for a long enough period of time.
right. And there is a point of like, yeah, when like you mentioned maturity, I think there's like a level of like maybe having to humble yourself a little bit and be like, okay, yeah, maybe this whole time I thought that I was doing all of the right things and just doing what you say you're doing, and you're not. And if you look back at your physique in the last 2, 3, maybe even longer, 5 years, your physique hasn't progressed at all. It's like, okay, yeah, you know what? Maybe I do need to start taking things to the next level, or just changing, just switching the strategy basically.
So let's kind of zoom out a little bit. I've kind of got some things jotted down here. Basically, we're talking about training. Why are we training? We're training to build muscle. Okay. So like, what conditions need to be in place to build muscle? Right? Like what all variables need to be, what boxes need to be consistently checked in order to build muscle, okay? So the first one is, these aren't necessarily in order of importance. They're just the three conditions that really need to be met in order to build muscle, okay? One of them is sufficient calorie intake, okay? So you can fucking have perfect training, every set taken to close proximity to failure, everything is with the training is fucking perfect, the volume is right where it needs to be, and if you are not eating a sufficient calorie intake, right, you're not going to be able to use that stimulus to put tissue on your body. That tissue needs to come from something, and that comes from extra calories that are not burnt up. So, hey, number one, the calorie intake needs to be sufficient to grow muscle. Number two, the protein intake needs to be sufficient to build muscle. And there may be some leeway with that because, like, what is sufficient protein intake? I think it's probably a lot lower than what most of us think. But the protein is, the amino acids are the building blocks of lean tissue, of muscle. So, like, you need the calories, you need, and that's first and foremost. You need the calories, and then you need the protein within those calories. Because if you think about it, what if you have a diet that is super high protein, right? So say you're eating 400 grams of protein in a day. That's what, 1,600 calories, right? 400 times 4, that's 1,600 calories. You're not going to, depending on who you are, right? But most
Right.
people are not going to be able to grow eating just 400 grams of protein. That's not enough calories. You need to be in a caloric surplus. So you can eat all the fucking protein you want, and unless you're eating, like, I don't know, a crazy astronomical high amount of protein, which nobody's going to do, you won't have a sufficient calorie intake for a surplus. So I guess the calorie intake needs to be first and foremost. Then the protein needs to be sufficient, right? Because it doesn't matter if you have sky high protein if the calories aren't there. And then the third one is that the training needs to be progressive. So I don't want to throw my client under the table, so I'm not going to say his name, but and this is something that I see a lot, right? So I had a client, and basically with his training, he at an 8-week block. So at 8-week block, I go in and I review, and most of the weights, and this is during a caloric surplus, okay? So this is during a growth phase. For 90% of the movements, the week 1 weights and reps were very, very similar, if not exactly the same as the week 8, okay? And during this time frame, his food's going up, his body weight's going up. I can almost guarantee you that very, very little muscle was put on during that time frame. Very little, because the training wasn't progressive. You didn't force your body to adapt to anything. So you should be able to look at the training and say, week 1, I was doing 100 pounds, and week 8 or whatever week, I was doing 125, 150. That progression needs to be in place, whether through load, through volume, whether through load or through volume. It needs to be in place. And if you don't have that in place, you're not fucking building muscle, right? Those 3 conditions need to be met. And if any one of them are not in place, you are going to look like the same human being. Versus if I have a person whose body weight is continually going up, and they start the program week 1 and they're bench pressing 200 pounds for 3 sets of 10. And at the end of 8, 10, 12 weeks, they're benching 300 pounds for 3 sets of 10. I fucking guarantee you their chest is bigger. It's
Right.
as simple as that, right? So if you don't have a means of understanding like that you have these things in place, you don't have a system to see like these conditions are being satisfied, maybe you're growing, maybe you're not. And that's the whole thing that we're talking about here. You need to have these systems in place, a way to understand what you're doing. Otherwise, you just spin your wheels.
Yeah. Are do you agree with sessions being wasted? Like are those are where you're not eating the way that you're supposed to be eating, like in accordance to, or that aligns with the training, that like you basically just went in, maybe you had a good session, but like, you're not progressing the same at the same rate that you could have if you were eating correctly?
Not necessarily, because I don't think it's all or nothing. I think that progress can lie on a spectrum. So if we're talking about optimal progress, all this stuff that I just talked about with like weights being progressive, I think that that's the most optimal way. But there may be scenarios in which you are lifting a similar weight across a similar volume and you did put some muscle on. Is that amount of muscle going to be as optimal or as much as if you were progressive with your training during that point in time? Fuck no. I don't think so. But really, like, and this kind of gets into the weeds with it, like really what we're after is tension and proximity to failure, right? And so one of the easiest ways to consistently reach that, because our bodies adapt to stress, right? Our bodies adapt to the weight. Our bodies adapt to the volume. One of the ways to predictably consistently hit tension and close proximity to failure is to, turn the intensity up or have progressive overload. But I'm sure that there are situations in which you could have training be, training load and volume be kind of the same and make gains. Perhaps now we're talking about, and this is still progressive overload though. Now we're talking about, okay, you're lifting the same weight, same reps, same volume, but is it cleaner? Are you firing the muscle harder? So, you know what I mean? Because that is in itself, that is also progressive overload. It's just progressive overload outside of looking at just weight and volume. You know what I mean? So I don't know that I believe in wasted sessions, because also any session in the gym, like, you're doing something good for yourself. You're keeping yourself in shape. You got something good going on if you made it to the gym, period. But it just depends on what you're trying to get out of it. If you're trying to get out of your training the most muscle on your body possible, then yeah, there's absolutely the potential to have just straight fucking wasted sessions. What do you think?
Yeah. I feel like there have been times where like over time my progression hasn't been what it's supposed to be, and I know that it would be where it was supposed to be, or it would be better if I was just eating the way that I was supposed to. So technically, like in the grand scheme, maybe those sessions, like it was just wasted time because I didn't progress how I could have. But yeah, like overall, I was still doing something good for myself. I still got in and moved and lifted weights, or maintained at least a certain shape. But I feel like I probably could have got more if I just had, things where they were supposed to be.
Well, so now on that topic, right? Let's say training is progressive, but you're just eating at maintenance calories or maybe slightly below, right? You're not in a consistent surplus. So that may be the situation where you have progressive training, but the food isn't exactly where it needs to be. So, but you see like week 1 or week 8, I'm lifting more weights than week 1, right? So in that scenario, maybe you got stronger, but you didn't put tissue on, because those two things aren't mutually exclusive, right? You can get stronger without putting muscle on. So again, if you were framing it like my goal is to build muscle, then yeah, that would have been a wasted session if you didn't eat the way that you're supposed to eat. If your goal was, hey, I don't really care about my muscularity, I'm a strength athlete, then perhaps not. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And yeah, I was speaking of myself in like the 3-4 years ago, before you and I started working together. Where like these last 2 years since I've had, we're tracking weight, we're tracking training, like everything has been structured. I've progressed more in these few years than I did the 5 years previous. Not doing all of the things that I was talking about at the beginning of the podcast, which is like just kind of going in, lifting based off of vibes, thinking that I'm training, but not actually having any plan that I was following, or any periodized planning. So yeah, seeing how I've been able to progress these last couple years, I think for sure in my head I'm like all of those years before that was just like wasted time. Like, like I said, I was able to maintain like a certain level of fitness or a certain level of strength, but then, in the grand scheme, it was a lot of wasted time.
Yeah, like if you want to change your body, you will need to do more. You will need to do more than you're used to doing. And what that more actually is depends. More is not just one thing. It's any of the things that I just talked about. It could be volume, it could be, load, it could be form. More can mean a lot of things. And more food. Like in order to change your body, you're going to need to get to the next fucking level. You're going to need to take a step and go where you had not been. Right. So I think that's just human nature is such that if you don't have a carrot dangling in front of you, right? Say like that's the next step. I know I need to get to that step. I know what I need to do to get to that step. If you don't have that set up in front of you, human nature is such, our minds, our bodies like homeostasis. They like the same, it likes the same shit over and over and over again. So if you don't have that system in place that allows you to understand this is what I need to do to progress, then odds are you'll find yourself going to the gym, lifting the same weights, the fucking same reps, the same shit over and over and over and over again, and have the same fucking physique.
Yep, exactly. That was my story. I think it's so many other people's stories that I'm just having conversations with as well. It's just I haven't really progressed, haven't gotten any stronger. There's been no changes in the physique, and then the only answer is all of the things that we're talking about, which is just having a set system, like making sure diet's on point, making sure you're getting enough protein. Training wise, it's volume, is periodization, all that stuff.
And the tricky thing with that is like, again, what's required to consistently train progressively and eat progressively, maybe things that you don't exactly like doing. You might have to do exercises you may not like to do, right? Or that you wouldn't do otherwise. Like training hard is fucking hard. You know what I mean? So if you're really trying to push your physique, like there may be certain elements of the process where the fun is not as much as you just getting in there and doing whatever you want, right?
Yeah.
But that's as such is life, where I don't want to wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning, but I need to wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning to do the things that I need to do to make the money to go to work, right? Like it's all just about what you need to do to get what you want out of it. So, you might just need to reframe or think about like what you want. You know what I mean? I guess think about what
Yeah.
you want, and that can be kind of like a guiding light. If what you want requires you to do in the now something you don't exactly want to do, you have to make that deal with yourself and say, you know what? I'm gonna eat this shit sandwich. I'm gonna lock in. I'm gonna do whatever I got to do, and I know it will pay off. And in the future, I will get something that I want. Delayed
Yeah.
gratification. That's this whole fucking shtick is delayed gratification.
I want to talk about, because you made a really good point. It's like hard training is hard. I think a lot of people haven't been exposed to how hard they can actually train as well. Like being shown that, the first time we worked out, I was thrown up halfway into the session. And I think a lot of people just they haven't been with someone who is training at a level higher than them. And I think that in itself can alleviate like a lot of these, or just some of the issues that we're talking about, like being able to be shown the next level, like you said, like what the dangling a carrot in front of you. It's like, being put through a hard workout by someone who's been doing this way longer than you. One, I think it'll show you a lot about yourself. There's some like it'll show you what you're made of type thing. But also like you think you were training hard before. This is actual hard training. And there's been times where I've had sessions with people like just for fun. They want to hey Joe, let's run your program and just, we'll see. And we're a couple movements in and they're like, I'm cash. Like there's no way you do this, and not like tooting my own horn or anything like that, but I feel like I know what hard training feels like, and I can see what hard training looks like in other people too. And a lot of people they don't know what it feels like. They don't know what it looks like. None of that until they get exposed to it.
Yeah, it's a skill you have to develop. And like just speaking about myself, the way that I've developed that skill is, people talk about like, oh, I'm going to a dark place. Like I got fucking demons I'm trying to, get out. I think
Yeah,
some people
exercise.
get there through that route, and that was kind of what it was for me, where like I've said this before, like I would be in sets like with big weights on my back or picking really big weights up off the floor, and I say I don't care if something blows out. I'm going to try to kill myself. Like crazy mental shit going on, you know what I mean? And I think if you have some of that in you, it can be harnessed, right? And you can hit that next gear because you're like, I don't care if my heart explodes. Like, I'm going to pick this shit up. And you almost feed off of that and get addicted to it, right? And you can have your brain override the pain that you're feeling in your body. And that can be very useful, or that can just absolutely destroy your body, but it can be a very useful thing. But I think for people that don't exactly have that thing where they are going to be a self-starter to just like go fucking crazy, like I just want to see what I can do. I want to see where the
Yeah,
fucking end is, right? I want to see what the end is, and I'm just going to see where I break. For people that don't have that, I think that they need to be usually shown that, because they don't have that curiosity or that drive to just push their body to the limit. And so they think that the limit is way fucking lower than it really, really is. And when you have somebody show you that, right? You're in a workout and, they tell you some crazy shit. We're going to do, 25, 35, 40, 50 reps on a leg press, right? And you're in it and you're going and you want to rack it at rep 15. And they're like, what are you doing? What do you just
yeah,
no, keep going, right? Until you have that experience where somebody is, not allowing you to put the weight down, or, motivating you, say, come on, let's go, let's do it. You can do it. And then you fucking do it and it sucks, but you do it till you have that moment. It can kind of be hard to harness it on your own if you don't have that, like, that kind of headspace that I was
yeah.
talking about previously.
Switch. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm kind of That's really all I had, bro.
I got something else.
Let's go.
And then, something we can touch on as well, because I kind of touched on the three conditions of building muscle, right? So we've got sufficient calorie intake, sufficient protein intake, and progressive training. Okay. So there are a couple conditions for fat loss as well, right? And I like kind of breaking this stuff down like this, because this allows me to say, like, what's the most important things? Like what at the bare minimum needs to be checked in order to move in the direction that I want to move in, right? So, with building muscle, notice that I didn't necessarily say how many meals in the day, what specific macros, the meal timing. Like, there's a lot of other variables that do have a play at building muscle, but that are not absolutely foundational, right? So some of those other variables can be just not factored or just be all over the place, and you're still going to build muscle. But if any of the three variables that I talked about are not in place, you don't build muscle. So those are the big rocks, right? Make sure you get those things in all the time if your goal is to build muscle. And if we're talking about fat loss, there's really only one condition that needs to be in place. Let me reframe what I just said. When we're talking about weight loss, there's only one condition that needs to be in place, one condition that needs to be met to lose weight. What is that?
Calorie deficit.
A calorie deficit. That's it. That's the only condition that needs to be met to lose weight. Now, there are conditions that will dramatically influence what type of weight you lose, because you can lose weight, but we've got water weight, we've got muscle weight, and we've got fat. So obviously, we don't want to be losing muscle weight. And there are conditions that influence whether we lose muscle or not, right? So those conditions are going to be your protein intake, and I could almost say calorie intake here too, because if calorie intake is too low, that can get you. So let me pause on that. So protein intake, You need to have sufficient protein, right? If you're in a calorie deficit and you're losing weight and the protein's just not there, you don't have the source material to maintain the tissue you have, right? And then the other one is training performance. And that's where calorie intake comes in. Because if your calorie intake as a whole is too low because you want to get greedy and lose a ton of weight really quickly, that's going to impact your training performance. And this ties all back into the concept of training being super fucking important, okay? One of our biggest indicators as to retaining muscle in a fat loss phase is what is your training performance doing, okay? So just like in building muscle, if you are in a caloric surplus and week 1 of a training program, you're lifting 200 pounds, for 10 reps, and then 10, 12, however many weeks later, you're lifting 300 pounds for 10 reps, you probably built muscle, right? And if you didn't see that weight moving up, you might not have, you maybe got a little bit, but you probably didn't get much of anything. The training needs to be progressive. In a fat loss phase, I can almost guarantee you that if you start a diet and you're lifting 200 pounds for 10 reps and you lose a bunch of weight over the course of 8, 10, 12 weeks, and you find yourself and you are now lifting 100 pounds for 10 reps, I can almost fucking guarantee that you've peeled off more muscle off of your body than what you needed to. And some of that is down to just making sure that you set your rate of loss to be reasonable so that you can support your training performance through adequate calories and only push them low enough to lose a reasonable amount of weight and keep training in a good spot. The training is super, super, super fucking important on either end of the spectrum, with your growing muscle or you're trying to lose fat. If you don't treat the training with respect, you're just going to end up spinning your wheels, So in that fat loss phase, you can even let total volume come down. I would say what matters the most in a fat loss phase is maintaining load and not so much training volume. So when I say volume, I'm speaking to total sets per week. I'm also speaking to reps within a single set, okay? I would much rather in a fat loss phase, say I'm bench pressing 315 for 10 reps at the start of a fat loss phase. I would much rather allow myself to come down to 8 reps, 9 reps, 7 reps, 6 reps. I would, even if the rep range is, on the plan says, fucking 8 to 10 or whatever, I would much rather allow my reps to fall off to a point than to say, hey, I've now dropped below the target rep range that's on the plan, so I'm going to reduce the weight that I'm lifting in order to get back into the rep range, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yes. So that load is absolutely paramount, and that's your training performance. That's a part of how are you upholding training performance. So you keep that in place. You make sure that you keep your training performance in a good spot, and that's going to provide you some insight that you are retaining the most muscle that you can possibly be retaining. If and when you see that shit start dive bombing, you know that you either need to pump the brakes, push the calories up, or revisit where you can improve your overall recovery because food is limited right now. You might need to pull down training volume. You might need to pull down cardio. You might need to look at a bunch of variables. Whatever needs to be moved around in order to support the training performance, that needs to happen, because if you don't do that and you allow your weights to keep coming down as you lose weight, I promise you're burning muscle off of your body.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up because I had a client. He's only in like a 200-ish calorie deficit. Like we just started. He's like, oh man, my strength is down. I'm feeling it in the gym. No, it's not. Something else is off.
Yeah, that's a whole nother rabbit hole to go down.
Yeah. I think you're expecting it to be down, or you're expecting to feel like shit. So that's what it is. But no, it's not. It's not enough for training to,
I just had a new client sign on, and she said, I understand that as we're losing weight that we'll expect to see strength go down, and I'm willing to accept that. And I said, no, we do not want to see your strength go down. Like that's kind of what I'm fucking good at is like dieting strength athletes into competition, right? And so what's the point of dropping weight to meet a weight cap if you're losing all your fucking strength? There's no point. So my job is literally to make sure through the diet, through managing fatigue, that that doesn't happen. And that's largely just down to staying on top of your training, right? To making sure that the rate of loss is not excessive and to listening to your body and pulling back when you need to pull back. Another big component of that is just simply the mindset. If you think a thing will be a way and you've bought into that, it probably will be that way. Your mindset matters so much. If you say, I'm going to get weaker, if you walk up to the bar, right? You walk up to the bar, you've got some plates, it's the PR for squats. If you walk up to that bar and all you're thinking is, I'm not going to get it, I'm not going to get it, I'm not going to get it, you're probably not going to get it. You're probably not. If you walk up to that bar and you say, I'm going to make this happen, it's going to come up, I got this, and you're going over your cues, you're visualizing it and you're manifesting it, you're probably going to get it. Your mindset matters 100% because if you get into that squat, right, and you go through your rep and you're coming up and that shit's heavy and it's slow, you know subconsciously that before you walked up to that bar, you told yourself you were going to get it. So you're going to be like, I said I was going to fucking get it. And you're going to fucking push harder and find that next gear. Versus if you walk up to that bar and told yourself you're not going to get it, when you hit that resistance point, you're going to be like, I knew I wasn't going to get it anyways.
Yep.
And you're not even going to fucking try. You're not even going to try. So how you approach this thing, lifting weights, the diet, maintaining strength, fucking everything in life, it absolutely matters. Your mindset can make you or ruin you.
Well said. Literally can't say it any better than that.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to drop off here. I think we got some good points in, so we'll wrap the pod up. Anything else you want to add?
That is all. Just share, like, comment, show some love.
Word. We'll see you on the next one.
See you guys.
See you.